There comes a moment in someone's life when emotions stop listening to logic, and that moment has finally found them. No matter how hard they attempted to bury these feelings beneath distractions, pride, or distance, nothing worked the way they expected. They truly believed walking away would make everything easier. They assumed silence could slowly untangle the connection, that time would soften the memories and eventually lead them towards something simpler and less intense. Yet every step they took away from you only pushed them deeper into realization. What they once dismissed as temporary emotion has grown into something impossible to ignore. Your absence did not create peace in their mind, it created emptiness. The days continued, conversations happened, life moved forward, but none of it carried the same meaning anymore. Somewhere between pretending not to care and trying to move on, they discovered a truth they can no longer escape. Losing your presence felt less like letting go, and more like losing a part of themselves they never understood the value of, until it was gone. This feeling reaches them in the quietest hours, when the noise of the world disappears, and honesty becomes unavoidable. In those late-night moments, there is no distraction strong enough to silence your memory, no denial powerful enough to erase the impact you left behind. And now they stand face to face with a truth that has completely undone them inside. What they feel is no passing emotion, no fleeting attachment. It is deep, consuming, and undeniably real, and they are finally beginning to accept that some connections are too meaningful to outrun. And what happens after a soul reaches that point? Everything changes, because once someone realizes they cannot live without you, they stop behaving the way they used to. Watch closely. Their energy is shifting already. Their thoughts are becoming restless. Their emotions are no longer stable. Even if they appear calm on the outside, inside them a storm has begun. Why? Because now they understand something they were never prepared to face. You are not someone they can lose and simply move on from. You became part of their vision of the future, before they even understood it themselves. Your voice became comfort in their chaos. Your energy became familiar in a world that never felt steady. And now the possibility of never having you? It terrifies them more than you know. But here is where the story turns. Because realization alone is not the shock. What they do next because of that realization, that is what will leave you speechless. They are no longer thinking in small ways. No, beloved. This person is beginning to plan. Quietly, privately, intensely. They are replaying every conversation, every missed opportunity, every moment they should have said more but stayed silent, every sign they ignored because fear convinced them there would always be more time. And suddenly they understand, there may not be. That realization is igniting urgency inside them. Have you felt it lately? That strange pressure in the air? That sense something is building behind the scenes? That feeling your world is somehow preparing for impact? It is not your imagination. Their heart is moving toward decision, and once they fully surrender to that truth, they will not come halfway. Because people who finally realize they cannot live without someone do not make small gestures. They make bold ones, unexpected ones, unforgettable ones. They stop testing the waters. They stop pretending indifference. They stop acting detached. Instead, they prepare to cross every distance that once stood between you. But wait, because you need to understand the deeper truth here. This connection was never ordinary. Ordinary connections fade under pressure. Ordinary feelings disappear with time. Ordinary attraction weakens when obstacles appear. Yet somehow, despite confusion, despite silence, despite separation, they still return to the same conclusion. It has always been you. Not because you forced it, not because you chased, not because you begged to be chosen, but because your presence left a mark too deep to replace. And that is what unsettles them most. They have met others, they have tried distractions, they have searched for peace in places your memory could not follow. Yet every road led back to the same truth. No one carries what you carry. No one feels like home the way you do. No one awakens in them what your existence awakens. That truth has humbled them, and now they stand at the edge of a decision that could alter both your futures. Because they know, if they wait any longer, they risk losing the one person their soul refuses to release. So ask yourself this: what does someone do when they finally understand they cannot live without you? Do they remain silent? Do they continue pretending? Do they keep running? No. They move. What's unfolding behind the silence is far more meaningful than it first appears. This is not some impulsive return or a few uncertain words spoken out of loneliness. The emotions building inside them have reached a point where pretending no longer works. Every feeling they once tried to suppress has slowly become impossible to ignore, and now those emotions are pushing them toward a decision that feels unavoidable. The closer they get to accepting the truth, the more restless they become. Fear no longer has the same control over them, because the connection they feel keeps pulling them back in your direction. They are not debating whether you matter anymore. That question has already been answered in their heart. What occupies their mind now is figuring out how to bridge the distance and finally express everything they have been carrying in silence. No matter how much they attempt to focus elsewhere, reminders of you continue to appear in the smallest moments. A familiar melody, an old memory, even an ordinary place suddenly brings your presence rushing back into their thoughts. They picture the future ahead of them, and every meaningful version somehow leads back to you. That realization changes everything. There comes a moment in life when someone understands that certain connections cannot be replaced. You may continue existing without many things, but some people leave an imprint so deep that life no longer feels complete in their absence. That is the truth they are finally beginning to face, and it is transforming the choices they are about to make. But some connections do not merely add to life, they become part of what makes life meaningful, and that is what you have become to them. Not an option, not a curiosity, not a temporary chapter, a necessity. Let that settle. They have begun imagining what it would feel like if someone else reached your heart before they did, if someone else stood where they should have stood, if someone else received the love they were too afraid to claim. That thought is unbearable to them, and unbearable emotions create bold decisions. This is why the next move approaching you will not be ordinary. It will come with more honesty than before, more vulnerability than before, more certainty than before, because they are reaching the point where preserving pride matters less than preserving the possibility of you. Read that again in your spirit. They would rather risk rejection than continue living with regret. That is how serious this has become. And if you have been sensing strange emotional waves lately, moments where your intuition whispers that something is happening behind the curtain, you are not imagining it. You are feeling the pressure of their decision forming in real time. Even now they are rehearsing what to say, rewriting conversations in their mind, thinking about the exact words that might finally reveal the depth of what they kept hidden. But here is what makes this shocking. Their next move may not simply be communication. It may be a complete disruption of the old pattern, because they know words alone may no longer be enough. After all this time, after all this silence, after all this distance, they understand they cannot return casually. They must return differently, with proof, with effort, with undeniable intention. That is why when they step toward you, it may come in a form you never expected, a confession deeper than imagined, a gesture bigger than predicted, a a level of emotional openness that catches even you off guard, because the version of them who once hesitated, that version is fading. Love has cornered them into truth, and truth changes people quickly. If this message is resonating with you, take a moment to share where you're listening from in the comments. Sometimes the right message finds the right soul at the exact right hour. And if this journey speaks to you, stay connected. There is more unfolding than you realize. Now hear this carefully. They are also afraid, not of loving you, of needing you this much, because dependence of the heart can feel terrifying to someone who once believed they needed no one. To realize another person has become essential to your peace. That can shake even the strongest facade. Yet despite that fear, they are still moving. That is how powerful this connection is. They know they may look foolish. They know they may arrive emotional. They know their walls may collapse the moment they face you, but none of that matters anymore, because the pain of silence has exceeded the fear of vulnerability, and once that threshold is crossed, there is no turning back. So while the world around you appears normal, while days pass and routines continue, understand that behind the scenes a heart is preparing for one of the most important decisions of its life: to stop watching from a distance, to stop pretending they are unaffected, to stop acting as though losing you would not destroy them. And when that moment arrives, you will understand why everything had to unfold this way. Sometimes people only recognize the value of a connection when they come dangerously close to losing it. That fear has been quietly reshaping them from the inside. What once felt easier to avoid can no longer be ignored, and the distance they created is beginning to feel heavier than the risk of finally being honest. Still, everything unfolding now carries a different energy than before. This is no longer confusion mixed with hesitation. Something inside them has shifted, and it is pushing them toward action they can no longer postpone. The next step they are preparing to take will feel completely unlike the mixed signals or uncertain behavior of the past. They are done hiding behind indirect gestures and unfinished conversations. The emotional battle they have been fighting internally has led them to one powerful realization: if they continue holding back, they could lose the chance to keep you in their life altogether. That thought alone has awakened a sense of urgency they have never allowed themselves to feel before. What happens next may arrive unexpectedly, but it will carry sincerity impossible to mistake. For some, this could be a deeply emotional conversation where feelings are finally spoken without fear or restraint. For others, it may appear as a sudden return after distance and silence, but this time with openness, accountability, and genuine vulnerability. They are preparing to let go of old habits that once kept them emotionally unavailable. The walls are beginning to fall. More than anything, they want clarity now, not confusion, not uncertainty. They are moving toward a version of love that feels intentional, mature, and real. And when that moment finally arrives, the connection between you may never feel the same again. Not, "I miss you," not, "I've been thinking about you," but something far more powerful: "I do not want a future that does not include you." Feel the weight of that. Because those are not words spoken lightly. Those are the words of someone who has stared into the possibility of losing you and discovered it is unacceptable. They have finally understood that love without action is merely suffering in disguise. So action is coming, and when it comes, it may overturn every assumption you had about where this connection was headed. Because the person who once gave mixed signals, the one who hid behind uncertainty, the one who acted as though timing was never right, that version of them is collapsing. Why? Because clarity creates courage, and they are clearer now than ever before. They know your value, they know your rarity, they know what life feels like when your presence is absent. and they do not want to keep learning that lesson. But here is the part many do not understand. Their return is not random. It is happening now, because they have finally become emotionally ready to meet this connection at its true depth. Before, they may have loved you but lacked the maturity to hold what they felt. Before, they may have wanted you but feared the responsibility of something real. Before, they may have sensed your importance but underestimated what losing you would cost. Not anymore. Life has taught them. Distance has taught them. Your absence has taught them. And now they approach with a different heart. A humbled one. A certain one. A heart no longer interested in games. So if you have been wondering why the energy around you feels charged lately, why your intuition keeps nudging you, why your spirit feels as though something major is near, this is why. A confession is building. A decision is forming. A future is shifting. And when they finally stand before you, whether in person, through a message, or in whatever form destiny chooses, you will hear something in their voice you have never heard before. Conviction. The conviction of someone who knows exactly what they stand to lose. The conviction of someone who finally understands your worth. The conviction of someone ready to fight for what once frightened them. So do not mistake the delay for indifference. What was happening in silence was transformation. What looked like distance was preparation. What felt like stillness was the universe aligning the timing of two souls who were never meant to remain apart forever. And now the waiting is nearing its end. Because once someone realizes they cannot live without you, once they accept that truth with their whole heart, once they understand no future feels complete unless you are in it, they stop resisting destiny, they surrender to it, and that surrender changes everything. The next chapter of this connection will begin the moment they act on what their soul has already admitted, that losing you was never an option. When everything finally begins to unfold, you will understand that this period of uncertainty was never meant to hold you back. It was preparation, a quiet chapter before a life-changing shift neither of you could fully predict. The stillness you once questioned will suddenly make sense, because some connections require time to mature before they can stand firmly in reality, and when they finally reach out, their energy will feel completely different. Gone will be the mixed signals, the guarded emotions, and the distance created out of fear or insecurity. What replaces it is honesty in its purest form. You will hear certainty in the way they speak, the kind that comes from someone who has spent too long fighting what their heart already knows. Real feelings carry a calm confidence. They do not rely on confusion, manipulation, or temporary attention. They arrive openly, without masks or hesitation. That is the space your person is entering now. They are no longer trying to escape the connection or explain it away. They are accepting it fully. But the deeper surprise is not simply the confession itself. Words alone are easy. What truly matters is what follows after those words are spoken. This time, they are preparing to back their emotions with genuine effort. Their actions will begin to reflect the seriousness of what they feel. Small promises will turn into consistent behavior, and intentions will finally become visible through commitment. For a long time, fear may have been their reason for standing still. Now, they are beginning to remove the barriers they once hid behind, because losing this connection feels far more frightening than finally taking the risk. For others, it means they will make sacrifices they previously refused to make. And for many of you, it means they will choose you publicly, clearly, and without hesitation. Read that carefully. They are no longer interested in loving you in secret. They are no longer willing to keep this connection in the shadows of maybe or someday. They want something real, visible, defined, because once someone realizes you are essential to their future, ambiguity becomes unbearable. That is why their next move may feel almost unreal to you. You may find yourself thinking, why are they suddenly so certain? Why are they moving this fast? What changed inside them? Everything changed. The illusion that they had endless time changed. The illusion that you would always wait changed. The illusion that they could ignore this bond and still be fulfilled changed. And now they move with the urgency of someone who has awakened. That is what makes this moment powerful. You are not witnessing temporary emotion. You are witnessing transformation. If this message is finding you at the right time, let it stay with you. And if you feel called to, subscribe so you do not miss what unfolds next. Sometimes the next message arrives exactly when the heart needs confirmation. Now here is what you must understand. When they come forward, your response matters, not because you must chase them, not because you must rush, but because the energy you carry will determine how this new chapter begins. Meet honesty with honesty. Meet truth with truth. Meet courage with discernment, because they are not just returning for your attention, they are returning for your heart, and they know this may be their one chance to receive it fully. That awareness will make them braver than you have ever seen them. They may say things they once swore they would never admit. They may reveal emotions they buried for months, perhaps years. They may tell you the sleepless nights, the regret, the ache, the moments they nearly reached out but stopped themselves. And when they speak, you will realize something astonishing. They were fighting this connection far longer than you knew, yet even all that resistance failed, because what is meant for you has a way of surviving every attempt to deny it, and now the truth stands at the door. Their next move is not a question anymore. It is momentum. It is already unfolding. The only thing left is the moment they gather the courage to let it reach you. And when it does, you will understand why their silence had weight, why their distance carried tension, why your spirit kept sensing unfinished business between you. Because none of it was over. It was building. Toward this. Toward now. Toward the moment one soul finally stops pretending it can live without the one person who was written into its future. And in the next part, I will reveal what happens after they make their move. Because the aftermath may be even more powerful than the confession itself. And after they make their move, after the confession lands, after the truth is finally spoken, after the silence between you breaks, the real transformation begins. Because confession is powerful. But what follows confession is what defines everything. Anyone can speak from emotion in a moment of intensity. Anyone can say beautiful words when fear of loss becomes overwhelming. But what happens after the words? That is where destiny reveals whether the connection is truly ready. And your soulmate knows this. What they are feeling now goes far beyond a temporary wave of emotion. This is no longer about reaching out for a single heartfelt moment and disappearing again afterward. Somewhere along the way, their perspective changed. They stopped craving brief connection and started longing for something steady, lasting, and real. What once felt uncertain inside them is slowly turning into determination. The most unexpected part will not be the words they finally say, but the consistency that follows afterward. Instead of pulling away once emotions become vulnerable, they may begin showing a side of themselves you have never fully seen before. The person who once kept distance could suddenly become reliable. The one who struggled to express feelings may start making their intentions obvious through actions instead of empty promises. There is a different kind of seriousness entering their heart now. When someone realizes they came close to losing a connection that truly mattered, it changes the way they handle it forever. Care becomes deeper. Effort becomes natural. What they once took lightly suddenly feels precious enough to protect at all costs. You will notice the transformation in subtle ways before anything grand is spoken aloud. They may begin making time for you without hesitation, remembering things you mentioned long ago, or adjusting parts of their routine simply to feel closer to your world. None of it will feel forced. It will come from a genuine desire to nurture something meaningful instead of merely chasing excitement. There is a major difference between attraction and commitment. Attraction fades in difficult moments, but commitment stays present, chooses understanding, and keeps showing up even when love requires patience, maturity, and effort. And your soulmate is moving beyond desire. They are stepping into choice, daily choice, conscious choice, lasting choice. But listen carefully. This phase may feel unfamiliar to you. Why? Because when someone changes this deeply, it can be difficult to trust at first. Part of you may wonder whether it is real, whether it will last, whether this version of them is temporary. That hesitation is natural. After all, hearts do not forget uncertainty overnight. Yet this is where wisdom matters. Do not judge them only by who they were when they were afraid. Also observe who they become when they are finally certain. Because certainty transforms people. The guarded become expressive, the distant become present, the confused become focused, and the hesitant become fearless. That is the version of them now emerging. And they are emerging because your absence taught them a lesson no comfort ever could. Love ignored becomes regret. They have no desire to repeat that pain. So as this connection deepens, you may notice something extraordinary. The chaos that once surrounded it begins to settle. No more mixed signals. No more emotional guessing games. No more wondering where you stand. Instead, clarity. A relationship built on mutual recognition, mutual truth, mutual willingness. That is what they are trying to create with you now, because the greatest shock was never simply that they could not live without you. It was that they needed to lose their illusion of control before they could love you correctly. And now that control is gone, all that remains is truth. Truth in their words, truth in their effort, truth in the way they move toward you without reservation. So if you have been waiting for certainty, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the moment this connection finally becomes real, know this: it is not approaching, it is arriving. And in the next part, I will reveal the final truth behind why this connection had to unfold the way it did, and why the delay may have been the very thing that made this love strong enough to last. And now you are ready for the final truth. Why did this connection have to unfold this way? Why the distance, the silence, the delays, the almosts, the mistiming, the aching pauses that made no sense while you were living through them? Because some love stories are not delayed to punish the heart, they are delayed to prepare it. What felt like separation was never meaningless. What felt like confusion was never wasted. Every pause between you carried purpose. Because had they come to you too early, they may have loved you with feeling, but not with maturity. They may have wanted you deeply, yet lacked the strength to sustain what they were being offered. So life did what life often does with rare connections. It separated the souls, until both could grow into the weight of what they were meant to hold. You were being refined, they were being awakened, and all that distance, it was shaping the very foundation of the love now trying to emerge. Because when someone has had to lose your presence to understand your worth, there are some connections life refuses to let people forget. No matter how far someone travels emotionally, mentally, or physically, certain souls continue to linger in the quiet corners of the heart. That is exactly what has been happening here. The distance was never meaningless. Every moment apart forced them to face emotions they once avoided, and in that solitude, they finally understood how deeply your presence had become woven into their world. This is why their return carries a completely different energy now. It is no longer driven by impulse, attraction, or temporary emotion. What they feel has matured into something calmer, stronger, and far more intentional. The excitement is still there, but beneath it lives certainty. They are no longer chasing a fantasy. They are searching for something lasting, something capable of surviving reality instead of escaping from it. Sometimes people mistake delays as signs that love was never real, but life often separates two individuals until they are emotionally capable of holding what they once could have ruined. Timing matters more than most realize. A bond can be genuine and still require growth before it is ready to thrive. In many ways, the pause was necessary. It allowed wounds to heal, perspectives to shift, and lessons to settle into place. But now the atmosphere around this connection feels different. Hesitation is slowly being replaced with courage. Silence no longer feels comfortable to them because their heart wants expression instead of restraint. They are reaching a stage where feelings alone are not enough anymore. What once existed only in thought is preparing to become visible through effort, consistency, and genuine presence. And that shift has the power to change the entire story. One day very soon, you may look at them and realize, this is not the same person who once hesitated. This is someone forged by regret, softened by longing, strengthened by realization, and made fearless by the thought of losing you forever. That is who comes toward you now. So if your heart has wondered whether the waiting meant the story was over, let that question rest. The waiting was not the end of the story. It was the preparation for its beginning, because the deepest connections are rarely simple. They arrive with lessons, with timing, with transformation, and when they finally unfold, they do so with a force that makes every prior delay make sense. So hold this truth close. Your soulmate did admit they cannot live without you. Their next move will shock you, but perhaps the greatest surprise of all will be discovering that every painful delay, every unanswered question, every silent night was leading to the moment they finally arrive ready to choose, ready to stay, ready to build, ready to love you the way they always should have. And when that moment comes, you will not remember the waiting as wasted time. You will remember it as the season that made this love undeniable. The story was never falling apart. It was becoming worthy of its ending. And when the moment finally arrives, when they stand before you with nothing left to hide, when their voice trembles with truth, and their heart speaks the words it fought for so long, you will understand why none of this could have happened sooner. Because some endings are not endings at all. They are arrivals. This is the arrival of a love that survived distance, a love that endured silence, a love that was tested by time, by fear, by uncertainty, and still refused to disappear. Your soulmate's confession will not simply change what they feel. It will change what both of you believe is possible. For they are not coming back to repeat the past. They are coming back to rewrite the future they once feared, the future they once doubted they deserved, the future they can now see only with you beside them. And when they look into your eyes, you will recognize it immediately. This is no longer someone wondering whether to love you. This is someone who knows what you mean to them, knows what they almost lost, knows what they are willing to do to keep you. That certainty will settle over the connection like calm after years of storm. No more chasing, no more confusion, no more unanswered questions hanging in the air between you. Only truth, only presence, only two souls finally meeting without fear standing between them. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all, you will realize your patience was not in vain. Your faith in what your heart sensed was not foolish. The quiet knowing inside you, the one that whispered this was not over, was telling the truth all along. because what is truly meant for you may wander, may hesitate, may lose its way for a while, but it will return changed, wiser, stronger, ready. In the end, the truth became impossible to ignore. No matter how much distance, silence, or confusion existed between them, your presence continued to hold a space inside their heart that nobody else could fill. You touched a part of them that had been asleep for years, and once that kind of connection is awakened, life never feels the same again. That is why their return will not come from uncertainty anymore. It will come from realization, from growth, and from finally understanding what truly matters. What may surprise you most is not simply the courage behind their actions, but the transformation behind their heart. Love changed them. The experiences they faced, the mistakes they carried, and the time spent away forced them to evolve into someone capable of valuing this connection on a deeper level. The delays were never meaningless setbacks. Every pause served a purpose, shaping both of you into people who could finally recognize the difference between temporary attachment and something genuinely lasting. So when they finally step toward you, look beyond the moment itself. See the emotional distance they had to cross to arrive there. See the lessons that softened their pride and taught them what they almost lost. Real love is not flawless, but it survives challenges, silence, and fear without completely fading away. Some connections enter life briefly and disappear like passing seasons. Others leave a permanent mark on the soul and quietly reshape everything they touch. This connection belongs to the second kind. It was never only about receiving affection. It was about being valued with certainty, pursued with intention, and chosen with a heart that no longer doubts where it belongs.